Well, I'm back. Did anyone miss me? I'm sure none of you really expected me to come back, especially since it's been 4 months since I've been in a video. But, seeing as how I ranked the Doctors in Doctor Who before, I guess Amy assumed I'd want to do that again, mainly because of the 15th Doctor. I mean, I was in a vacation simulator before Amy pulled the plug on me, and that was really fucking annoying. So, I'm only doing this so that I can go back to my vacation. Over the course of his tenure as the showrunner of Doctor Who, Chris Chibnall made a ton of decisions that can kindly be called strange, but realistically tend to be labelled downright bad by long-time fans of the show. The Fugitive Doctor represents some of the worst qualities of Chibnall's run: nonsensical retcons, desperate plot twists, and poorly fleshed-out characters. It's a shame, because actress Jo Martin is a scene-stealer as the Doctor, bringing a composed aura of mystery and a no-nonsense attitude to the character. However, in the hands of a capable writer, she could be an excellent character. A past incarnation of the hero from an unknown point in time, she could bring a lot of interesting twists to the lore and generate lots of fascinating stories, even if those stories haven't had a chance to come to light just yet. Though he's usually agreed to be the worst of the main Doctors, Colin Baker's 6th Doctor nevertheless has a lot to offer, and is not without his fair share of fans. Passionate and intimidating, he was a version of the character one wouldn't want to be enemies with. Despite his pretty short run, he had some of the most interesting stories of the classic series, such as the introduction of the legendary antagonist Valeyard. However, more often than not, Six was downright unlikable. He could be mean, arrogant, and unstable, something that was meant to be the beginning of a character arc that sadly never came to fruition. Baker is fantastic in the role, but the writing unfortunately let him down. Fans think he's an outstanding character in the Big Finish audio dramas, but that's a whole other story. The 8th Doctor, played by Paul McGann, suffers from having the least amount of screen time of the main Doctors. In 1996, 7 years after the cancellation of the original series, the long-time return of this seminal classic came with Doctor Who, the movie, a co-production between the BBC and Universal Studios. In it, Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor regenerates into McGann's 8th, then taking on the Evil Master, one of television's greatest villains, at the turn of the millennium. Eccentric, romantic, and much more effortlessly charming than any of his predecessors, 8 saw the character become much more in tune with the human side that he'd acquired over the course of his adventures. Though the movie didn't give McGann much to work with, failing to become the revival of the show's popularity that it was intended to be, he got a chance to play the character on screen again in the short episode The Night of the Doctor, a beautiful farewell to an underappreciated version of the Doctor. When Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor started regenerating, fans were fully expecting to get to meet Ncuti Gatwa's version of the character for the first time. In one of the most unexpected twists television has seen in recent years, though, audiences were shocked when she instead transformed into David Tennant, who had played the fan-favorite 10th Doctor up until 12 years prior.
What? What?
The Doctor was just as confused as fans about why he had returned to his old face, something that wasn't unprecedented but had certainly never been explored in depth before. The answer remains a mystery that's sure to be explained sometime in the future.
Editing Amy coming in here to say that they did mention in Doctor Who before that the Doctor can regenerate into an old form if they wanted to, so they technically did explain why 13, why 14 looks like 10, because technically, if the Doctor wanted to, they can regenerate into an old face again, so I just wanted to say that.
The 14th incarnation of everyone's favorite universe-trotting Time Lord isn't too dissimilar from 10th, being just as adventurous and kind, while also being much wiser and more emotionally open. Viewers haven't had enough time with him to really explore his individuality, but they're sure to see him again sometime. Sylvester McCoy's Seventh Doctor is a tough one to judge, having gotten the short end of the stick as the final incarnation of the Doctor before the classic series' tragic cancellation. Over the course of the years, though, history has been kind to his portrayal of the character. Fans are now much more willing to appreciate the fresh spin that he put on the hero, playing him as a charismatic clown on the surface, and a ruthless chess master under that facade. Having a Doctor who can be hilarious in one moment, and absolutely terrifying immediately after, was certainly a lot of fun. However, Seven unfortunately didn't have many standout story arcs during his run, and the fact that his tenure was cut short didn't allow the writers to properly explore the interesting parts of his complex personality. As such, fans usually find him a very middle-of-the-road version of the Doctor. Bringing the character of the Doctor back to a more joyful and energetic place after the more brooding rendition given by Peter Capaldi, Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor was always a delight to watch on screen. She was more compassionate than many of her predecessors, much closer to the human side that her beloved companions brought out of her. Still, she could be quite dangerous when tested. Whittaker brings an incredible spark to the character that no other actor could have captured quite as magically. Tragically, though, 13 fell victim to atrocious writing more often than not. Despite her long run, the variety of plot holes and her rather confusing characterization meant that most fans felt they never got a chance to truly know her. Despite that, though, she left an indelible mark on the series that's sure to be felt all throughout its future.
Yes. This Doctor you're looking at right now, I don't know if Walter showed you him already, but Peter Davidson, yes, that is David Tennant's father-in-law, and yes, Peter Davidson's daughter did actually play a character in Doctor Who. Funnily enough, I think she played the Doctor's daughter. So, that's interesting to know. Let's just keep going now.
Anyone able to pull off a celery stick as a fashion statement is worthy of respect, so there are no complaints about the Fifth Doctor's impeccable sense of style. That's not the only thing that makes him many people's favorite Doctor, though. Gentlemanly, agreeable, and more vulnerable than any of the character's past incarnations, Peter Davison's version of the Doctor had some of the classic show's most memorable story arcs, including some of the best for initiates to jump into the series. Sadly, Davison had the impossibly hard task of filling the gigantic gap left by Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor, who was in the role for 7 years, more than any other actor in the show's history. As such, fans were much more attentive to his portrayal's flaws, such as his constantly saying his lines sort of out of breath. Moreover, the writing sometimes faltered during his run, failing to make 5 particularly authoritative or imposing. Still, the years have made viewers warm up to this version of the character a lot more, finally focusing more on the pros than the cons. For Doctor Who's 50th anniversary, fans were treated to one of the show's best episodes, The Day of the Doctor, where an ancient battle reaching its devastating conclusion connects the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, to his tumultuous past. One of the episode's most exciting attractions was the introduction of legendary actor John Hurt playing a previously unknown incarnation of the Doctor, one between Paul McGann's 8 and Christopher Eccleston's 9, the War Doctor, a hardened soldier who fought in the Time War between the Time Lords and the Daleks. The Time War had always been one of the most interesting additions that the show's revival made to the lore, so it was fascinating to see the Doctor who had to live through such atrocities. Even though the character didn't have nearly enough screen time to become an even bigger fan favorite, he commanded the screen during the Day of the Doctor, expanding the character's complexity beautifully. There will always be a very special place in the heart of Doctor Who fans for the one who started it all. William Hartnell played a version of the Doctor that, in retrospect, stands in stark contrast to every other portrayal that came after him. The first Doctor could be aloof, arrogant, and grumpy from time to time. As his run evolved and his original companions left the TARDIS, though, the old man came to be much more compassionate, loving, and appreciative of humans and Earth. Throughout Doctor Who's history, one has returned on a variety of occasions, most recently played by David Bradley, who played Hartnell in An Adventure in Space and Time, one of the most underrated biopics of recent times. Hartnell quite literally lay the foundations for the character with a nuanced, endearing portrayal that saw a beautiful evolution until his very emotional regeneration, the show's first. Those who enjoy when the Doctor feels like a badass superhero most likely call Jon Pertwee's Third Doctor their favorite incarnation of the character. With his mastery of an alien martial art, a yellow car named Bessie as his main mode of transportation, and some of the Doctor's best companions, he certainly remains one of the most distinct and rather campy versions of the hero. He was exiled on Earth for a large portion of his run, but eventually made his return to exploring all of time and space. Although this version of the character had quite a few stories that could come across as bland and forgettable, he also stands out as one of the most distinct Doctors in the series' history. He's an action hero through and through, constantly engaging in high-speed chases and hand-to-hand combat, while also getting plenty of chances to explore his personality and show off his intelligence. He's criminally underappreciated, even by many long-time fans of the show. Arguably more so than any other actor in Doctor Who's history, Patrick Troughton had a massive weight on his shoulders when he took on the role. He had the responsibility of both living up to William Hartnell's fantastic portrayal, and selling 1960s audiences on the idea of regeneration. The concept of a show's protagonist changing appearance and personality was pretty novel back in the 60s, and it was up to Troughton to prove that it could work. Prove it he certainly did. Though many of Troughton's episodes are lost, preventing viewers from appreciating his run even more, he still stands out as a fan favorite. Nicknamed the Cosmic Hobo, too is much more childlike and exuberant than his predecessor, while never ceasing to be calculating and terrifying to his enemies. If Hartnell created the character, it was Troughton who really came to define him, and all future incarnations owe more to him than to perhaps any other actor who's played the Doctor. Because of this, many fans, including David Tennant himself, think that the second Doctor is the best version of the time-traveling hero. Having stepped into the role at 26 years old, Matt Smith still holds the record for being the youngest actor to play the Doctor. Some fans were worried about what this could mean for the character and the show as a whole, but Smith immediately won over fans' hearts and still is many viewers' favorite. The 11th Doctor was a bubble of never-ending energy, youthful and playful, but could also be one of the scariest versions of the character when provoked. This made him a formidable hero just as often as he was a lovable dork. Smith was terrific in the role, bringing complexity and a surprising amount of pathos to one of the most joyful incarnations the Doctor has ever been. While some fans never really warmed up to the Doctor being so childish so often, it can't be denied that 11 had three of the revival's greatest seasons, with multiple memorable stories that made him one of the most nuanced versions of the hero to date. There's a saying in the Doctor Who fandom, never skip 9. Though he only appeared during one season of the show's revival, the very first, Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor is an unacceptably underrated version of the character with a riveting arc. Many of the revival's best stories, including one of its scariest, and one of the most brilliant performances the show has ever seen in Eccleston's portrayal of this lonely, grieving version of the Time Lord. Sadly, 9's admittedly short run didn't allow the writers to give him even more depth, but the layers and very distinct feel that his character did have made him stand out immediately. As the actor in charge of proving that Doctor Who could work in the modern age, with updated character writing and different kinds of stories for 21st century audiences' sensibilities, Eccleston did a perfect job.
You could have done so much more if you only had time.
Tom Baker's 4th Doctor is pretty much universally agreed to be the best Doctor of the show's classic era. In fact, it's not the least bit uncommon for him to be fans' favorite. Having been in the TARDIS for a whopping 7 seasons, 4 had many of the show's most iconic stories and companions, and got plenty of chances to show a complex, riveting personality. Eccentric and humorous, clever and whimsical, 4 often proved that he was willing to make sacrifices for not only those he cared about, but even his enemies. Baker brought more complexity, nuance, and layers to the Doctor than his predecessors ever had, which made him the most beloved incarnation of the character for a long time. As one of the most iconic TV characters of all time, the Fourth Doctor is the embodiment of everything that makes Doctor Who so popular. Now, we're up to Amy's favourite Doctor, number 12, aka Peter Capaldi. When he stepped into the shoes of the Doctor, Peter Capaldi was 55, the same age as William Hartnell, the oldest actor to portray the character at the beginning of their tenure, when he took on the role. As such, the 12th Doctor brought the character back to his roots after the bombastic energy of Tennant and Smith. Wise, philosophical, and sometimes a bit grumpy, 12 spent his 3-season run trying to find his purpose, which he eventually discovered to be pure, unstoppable kindness. Capaldi, easily one of the best actors to portray the Doctor, brought deep subtext to his every line of dialogue, as well as rich complexity to his Doctor's personality. 12 tended to be brusque and pragmatic to a fault, but as he aged, he became a lot more expressively caring and funny. He was a recontextualization of everything the character had come to represent up to that point, and it worked beautifully. As if that weren't enough, he once barged into a medieval battle arena while playing the electric guitar on top of a tank. If that's not top-tier Doctor material, who knows what is? Christopher Eccleston may have brought back Doctor Who, but it was David Tennant and his masterful performance as the beloved 10th Doctor that skyrocketed the show's success, and ensured that it would remain in the pantheon of modern pop culture. 10 was loyal, charming, and lively. He could always get out of sticky situations, and he had great love for his friends. However, when provoked, he could be by far the most terrifying incarnation of the Doctor, a fearsome tactician constantly flirting with, but never falling into, downright villainy. This grey morality often made the 10th Doctor incredibly compelling to watch, and Tennant made sure that this dark side never fully took over the Doctor. He was a hero through and through, with plenty of the best episodes in all of Doctor Who and some of the best companions in the revival. He was the kind of character you yearned to go on an adventure with, and by tuning into his outstanding 3-season run, you always could. In an unprecedented turn of events, perhaps the most shocking regeneration scene in Doctor Who's history, which is saying a lot, that Toymaker, Neil Patrick Harris, tried to force the 14th Doctor, David Tennant, to regenerate. His attempt wasn't particularly successful, though, as his attack instead caused a bigeneration, a process previously thought to be a myth wherein a Time Lord splits into 2 separate beings. The new 15th Doctor, played by a terrific Ncuti Gatwa, then teams up with 14 to defeat the Toymaker. It's still way too early to judge Gatwa in the role, as his tenure has only just begun. There's an awful lot of promise, though, charming, jovial, expressive, and with just the right amount of cockiness. He's an abundantly youthful version of the character who's bound to get himself into all sorts of fun trouble.